I can still see her across the table, the way her fingers tapped nervously against her cup. It was supposed to be a normal evening. Instead, she looked me in the eye and said words I never expected. "I think we should postpone the wedding." The world slowed down, like the air itself grew heavy. We were only weeks away. Everything was set. And yet, just like that, forever suddenly felt fragile. Up until then, everything with her felt like a story people dream about, but rarely live. We met in our second year of college, when the world was still too big, and our plans were still sketches on paper. She was sitting in the back of the lecture hall, scribbling notes furiously, hair falling into her eyes. I remember asking her for a pen, and she handed me one without looking up, as if I wasn't even there. For some reason, that tiny, careless gesture hooked me from that moment. I found excuses to talk to her study groups, late-night coffee runs, casual conversations that somehow stretched into hours. It didn't take long before we were inseparable. Through exams, internships, and that first shaky year of figuring out adulthood, we became each other's constant. She was there for me when I doubted myself, and I was there for her when life seemed too heavy. Those early years built a foundation I thought could weather anything. By the time we were in our 20s, our relationship felt less like a choice and more like gravity. We moved into our first apartment together, cramped one bedroom, with peeling paint and a leaky faucet. But to us, it felt like a palace. We stayed up late planning the future, imagining where we'd live, how many kids we might have, what kind of life we wanted to build. There was something comforting about believing that all those late-night whispers would eventually turn into reality. My family adored her. She had this way of making people feel at ease, of sliding into conversations like she'd always been part of them. My mother once told me, "She feels like home." Even my father, a man of few words, nodded in quiet approval whenever she was around. Friends envied what we had, often saying, "You two are the perfect couple." I would smile, proud but also humbled, because deep down, I believed it too. That's why her hesitation didn't make sense. Everything pointed to stability, to forever. We had survived long distance when she studied abroad for a semester. We had handled money troubles when our jobs barely covered rent. We had faced arguments, messy, heated ones, and always found our way back. If anything, those struggles had made us stronger. Or at least, that's what I thought. Looking back, I wonder if I missed the signs, even then. Maybe she laughed a little too quickly when friends teased her about marriage. Maybe her smile faltered when relatives asked when we'd finally settle down. At the time, I brushed it off. We were in love. That was enough. I never imagined the idea of forever could weigh so heavily on her shoulders. Before the storm, everything looked perfect. And maybe that's the cruelest part. How convincing perfection can be, right before it breaks. After that first conversation about postponing the wedding, I tried to convince myself it was nothing serious. People get nervous. Weddings are overwhelming. That's what I told myself, clinging to the idea that a little doubt was normal. But almost immediately, I began noticing small changes, things I might have ignored before, but now couldn't unsee. She started staying late at work. At first, it was once or twice a week, then almost every night. When I asked, she shrugged it off, saying deadlines were piling up or a colleague needed her help. Her explanations sounded believable, yet her eyes never quite met mine. At home, she grew quieter. We used to spend hours debating the tiniest wedding details, the flowers, the playlist, the menu. Now, whenever I brought them up, she would wave it off. "We can figure it out later," she'd say, scrolling through her phone, her thumb moving in quick, nervous motions. She angled the screen away from me, and though I tried not to pry, the secrecy gnawed at me. The physical distance hurt most. Reaching for her hand had always been second nature. But more and more, she pulled away too quickly, as if my touch burned. Sometimes, she'd mask it with a smile, pretending she hadn't noticed. But I noticed, and every time. It left a hollow ache in my chest. I kept reminding myself of what friends and family said. "Don't worry, weddings bring pressure. Everyone freaks out a little." I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe this was just stress, nothing more. But deep down, beneath the surface excuses, I felt something shifting. It wasn't just distance, it was detachment. a subtle wall growing between us, built from late nights, half-truths, and silences that stretched too long. I'd catch her staring out the window, lost in thought, as if she were already someplace else. I told myself it was a phase, that she'd come back to me once the weight of wedding planning lifted. But in my gut, I knew this wasn't about stress. It wasn't about nerves. Something was slipping away, and no matter how tightly I tried to hold on, I could feel her loosening her grip. And the most terrifying part, I didn't know how to stop it. 2 weeks before the wedding, she repeated the words that had already begun to haunt me. I need more time. Please don't pressure me. Her voice was steady, almost rehearsed, but her eyes betrayed something I couldn't name. It wasn't fear, not the kind couples feel when they're nervous about vows or families clashing. No, this was different. It looked almost like relief. Relief that she had bought herself more time, as if postponing wasn't about fixing us but about escaping me. I remember staring at her across the room, caught between heartbreak and denial. I told myself that patience was proof of love, that giving her space was what any caring partner would do. But a quiet, stubborn part of me whispered that patience wasn't the answer, because she wasn't coming back in the way I hoped. The days that followed were heavy, stretched thin with silence. Conversations grew short, almost mechanical. We stopped talking about wedding plans altogether. Invitations sat in unopened envelopes, a painful reminder on the counter that love wasn't moving forward. Every time I tried to bring up the future, she deflected, claiming she needed to clear her head, that she couldn't make promises until she was certain. But weren't we already certain? Years together, endless nights planning our lives, families blending like we were already one. How could certainty suddenly dissolve into hesitation? At night, I'd lie awake listening to her breathe beside me, but even her breathing felt distant. She turned away in her sleep, curling into herself. I reached for her hand more times than I can admit, desperate for a sign that she still belonged to me, still wanted this life we were building. Most nights, my hand met only the empty space between us. The postponement should have felt temporary, a pause button before we resumed. But deep down, I knew it was something else. It wasn't, not yet. It was a quiet never. And yet, I clung to the hope that if I gave her space, she'd realize what we had was worth saving. That she'd wake up one morning and remember the promises. 3 days before the rescheduled date, everything came crashing down. I woke up to silence, not the usual kind, but a silence that felt wrong, heavy, almost staged. Her side of the bed was untouched. At first I thought she had left early for work, but when I walked into the living room, the emptiness hit me like a punch to the chest. Her things were gone, not scattered or hastily thrown into a bag. The closet doors hung open, hollow. The bathroom counter, once cluttered with her perfumes and brushes, was spotless. Even the framed photos that had lined our shelves were missing, as if she had carefully erased herself from the life we built together. I tried calling her, straight to voicemail. Texts wouldn't deliver. By noon, panic turned into desperation. I called her friends, her coworkers. Nobody knew anything, or maybe they pretended not to. Even her parents claimed surprise, though I could hear something guarded in their voices, like they were holding back more than they admitted. Then came the email. No subject line, no greeting, just a few lines. Please understand. I need to do this for me. That was it. No explanation, no destination, no promise of coming back. My fiancée, the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, reduced our years together to a single cold paragraph. The days that followed blurred into each other. I searched everywhere: airports, bus stations, mutual friends. I filed a missing persons report, though the officer's expression told me he'd seen this before. Sometimes, he said gently, people just leave. But how could she just leave? Without a goodbye, without a fight, without even a conversation. Weeks crawled by, and just when I was starting to lose hope, I saw her. Not in person, on a friend's tagged photo online. I remember staring at the screen until my eyes burned. She was standing on a crowded street, somewhere bright and foreign. A vibrant red scarf draped around her shoulders, the same one I gave her on her birthday. She looked alive. She looked free. She looked happy, and that's when it hit me. She hadn't been lost. She hadn't been confused. She hadn't been searching for clarity. She had chosen this, chosen to vanish from my life and build a new one somewhere else. Without me, the betrayal cut deeper than anger. It was the silence, the unanswered questions that tore me apart. Was she planning this all along, even as we picked out flowers and rings? Was I just a chapter she couldn't wait to end? I scrolled through that photo again and again, searching her smile for guilt, for hesitation, for any sign she thought of me. But there was nothing, just a stranger wearing the face of the woman I once knew. And in that moment, I realized she hadn't postponed our wedding. She had postponed the truth. And now, I was the only one still waiting. People always say that time heals. But nobody tells you that silence can wound deeper than words ever could. It's been months since she vanished. And still, I wake up some mornings expecting to hear her voice in the kitchen, the faint clink of her mug against the counter. But all I find is silence, thick, heavy, suffocating silence that refuses to let me move on. Everyone has their advice. Friends tell me I should be grateful I found out before the vows. My parents remind me that I'm young, that I'll meet someone else, someone who won't leave. I nod, smile, pretend to listen, but none of them understand. They didn't watch the life they built dissolve overnight. They didn't feel the ground pulled out from under them with no explanation, no warning, no chance to fight for it. It's not just her absence that hurts, it's the questions. Endless looping questions that never find answers. Did she ever really love me? Or was I just a chapter in her story, a stepping stone toward something better? Was every laugh, every late-night whisper, every kiss genuine? Or just rehearsals for her escape? I replay our memories, like old home movies in my head. The day she met my parents, when my mother whispered, "She feels like home." The night we danced in the rain outside our first apartment, soaked but laughing, convinced that love was enough to survive anything. Were those moments real for her? Or was she already dreaming of another life, another country, another version of herself, where I didn't exist? The cruelest part isn't that she left, it's that she left without giving me the dignity of closure. She didn't just end the wedding. She didn't just end us. She left me stranded in the middle of questions that will never be answered. And that's a kind of prison no one sees from the outside. Some nights I scroll back to that photo of her in Bangkok. She looked radiant, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. Maybe that's the truth. I can't accept that freedom, to her, meant leaving me behind. Maybe she didn't regret it at all. Maybe she finally felt free. And yet, part of me still wonders, does she ever think of me? In the quiet moments, does she replay our memories the way I do? Or am I nothing more than a faded chapter she never intends to revisit? She didn't just postpone our weddings. She postponed me, my life, my closure, my peace. And every night, when the silence presses in, I'm left with the same haunting question. If she ever looks back, will she regret vanishing? Or will she thank herself for finally walking away?